Following their short visit to the Black House of Allah, Kaaba, Malik and Malika traveled to Egypt. They stayed for a couple of weeks in a small hotel at a crowded area called Ataba in downtown Cairo. They visited many tourist attractions including popular places like the Pyramids of Giza and the Sphinx, the Bazaar Khan el Khalili, and the Al-Haram Street. During those 2 weeks, they hardly gathered any information about the abuse of women in the Muslim world. All the places they visited were crowded by foreigners and Egyptian prostitutes. Everything was allowed in those tourist sites, as if it wasn't a Muslim city. Nightclubs, liquor stores, bars, discos, beaches filled with women in bikinis, cabarets for Egyptian girls dancers, dancing nude, belly dancers, and prostitutes everywhere. What the couple had seen so far in that great Islamic nation refuted all the false claims that the Egyptian imam of the mosque in the USA had told them about his homeland. The Muslim Brotherhood political party knew that the highest revenues of Egypt come from tourism. Wherefore, during their political campaigns they proposed to introduce halal tourism, and that could be achieved through Islamizing tourism all over the country. They wanted to stop selling of alcohol and putting burqas on all naked statues of the pyramids, forcing all cabarets dancers, belly dancers, film actresses, female tourists, and prostitutes to don hijabs or niqabs, and closing all nightclubs, liquor stores, bars, discos, beaches, etc. This proposal brings to mind the suggestion of some American Muslims who wanted to have Barbie dolls in burqas. When the Muslim Brothers won the presidential election and came to power, they could not immediately implement their impracticable proposal. No tourist, Arab or Westerner, will like to come to a country where alcohol is forbidden, women are forced to dance in cabarets while they are wrapped with black hijabs, or visit a beach where girls are clad in ubiquitous abayas and or burqas and burkinis. A burkini is a type of a swimsuit for Muslim women. Originally designed in Australia by Ahmed Zanetti, the suit covers the whole body except the face, the hands, and the feet. It is a kind of a burqa converted into a bikini. It is just like someone tries to change a black demon into an angel of light. Before Muslims could implement their halal tourism's proposal, they were kicked out of power by the Egyptian army through a coup. On the day, the Egyptian police and military soldiers forcibly vacated the 2 gatherings of Muslim Brotherhood protesters. The Coptic Christians of Egypt were made the scapegoats. 101 churches had been attacked, looted, and burned down by Muslims. Dozens of Coptic institutions such as schools, monasteries, bookstores, and even orphanages were also attacked and plundered. Hundreds of Coptic stores, hospitals, pharmacies, businesses, and homes were similarly attacked. Egypt was a Christian country for 7 centuries until Muslims of Arabia invaded it and started imposing heavy jizya on its Christian inhabitants. Those who couldn't pay the heavy jizya were forced to convert to Islam on pain of death. The ISIS Mujahideen did the same thing to the Iraqi Christians of Mosul city. Obey, pay, or leave or die by the sword. Obey and become Muslims, pay the jizya in pure gold, or leave homes and go out of the city. If the Iraqi Christians refused to follow one of those 3 options, they forfeit their heads. Almost all the Iraqi Christians chose to leave their city. Nonetheless, ISIS fighters did not allow them to take even their passports or any identification papers. They confiscated their houses, churches, wealth, and all other properties. They weren't allowed to take even their clothes except the ones on their backs. Many ancient and modern churches' buildings were blown up and totally destroyed as soon as the Christians left. Some churches' buildings were spared and converted into mosques. Some buildings were made places of imprisoning and torturing the ISIS enemies and defectors. In order to understand why the ISIS behaved the way they did towards the Christians of Iraq, we need to go back in time and learn what the Prophet of Islam had done to the Jews of Khabar city. Khabar was the 2nd city, after Mecca, in its importance and military force. There was no any specific reason given by Muhammad for attacking the Jews of Khabar except his claim that Allah said he had given the city to the Muslims. Khabar was the 3rd city in size after Mecca and Medina and exclusively inhabited by Jews. The Jews of Khabar had not expected Muhammad to attack them because they had signed peace treaty with him, and therefore the sudden arrival of the Muslim troops was a great surprise to the inhabitants of the city. The city was well protected by its high and strong garrisons. For this reason, the Khabarians felt safe inside their strongholds and refused to listen to the Prophet's repeated calling to surrender to him. Hurab Dalt al-Rasul, Sayyid al-Kimni, 2001. Page 444. When the city refused to surrender, the Prophet decided to use the catapults to destroy the garrisons. According to al-Kimni, the catapults had never been used in Arabia before that day. When the garrisoned Jews saw the catapults, they knew their death was near, and if the Prophet strike the city with the catapults, he will destroy it to the ground and everyone inside the city would perish. In order to avoid such devastation, the leader of the city, Kanana ibn al-Rabi, emerged out of the city, holding the flag of surrender. He approached the Prophet and told him about the willingness of his people to sign again a peace treaty with him. The Prophet agreed on a treaty with the condition that they should vacate their city and leave for him their money, garrisons, and land, and they should not take a yellow or a white thing except that which cover their nakedness from their clothes. Quoting from Ibn Kathir, Al-Bidayah page 200. Moreover, the Prophet told the leader that if he hides anything from him, then Allah and the Prophet are free from that treaty, page 445, referring to Ibn Kathir page 204. Al-Kimni also consults another Islamic source in this regard. The Prophet said to the leader, "And if you hide something and I come to know it, then your bloods and women are permissible to us." Page 445, quoting from Ibn Sa'd, Al-Tabaqat, page 81. When the leader agreed to reveal everything regarding their wealth and money, the Prophet asked him about a treasure that he knew they had. The leader of the Jews denied the existence of such a treasure. According to Al-Kimni, the question of the Prophet was a trap in order to make the leader fall in its snare, because the Prophet knew already about the matter of that great treasure, and where it is hidden. Page 445, quoting Ibn Sa'd page 77. The information of the treasure had already reached the ears of the Prophet through a Jew, who sold his people and revealed the secret of that great treasure, page 446. The Prophet ordered Al-Zubair ibn al-Awwam to torture the Jewish leader until he reveals the hidden place of the treasure. According to Ibn Hisham, Al-Zubair used a burning rod and tortured the Jewish leader until the latter died. The Prophet asked Muhammad ibn Salama to strike off the neck of the leader and the neck of his brother Muhammad ibn Muslama, quoting Ibn Hisham page 43. After the leader and his brother were executed, the sword of Islam moved on the surrendered Jews, and killed from them, according to the words of Ibn Sa'ad, 93 men, page 447, quoting from Ibn Sa'ad page 77. The booty and the women of the Jews were distributed among the Muslims, page 448. According to all the narrators of the Surah and the news, at the invasion of Khabar, the Muslim men forced the Jewish women to sleep with them openly, and the Khabarian women were shared by all men, until the Prophet stopped the rape of the pregnant women, referring to Ibn Said al-Nas, Wiyun, page 176. As for the Prophet himself, he took Safiyyah bint Huwaya after he killed her husband and father, pages 448 to 449, quoting from Ibn Kathir page 197. At Khabar, a Jewish woman, known as Zainab bint al-Harith, made an attempt on the Prophet's life, and that by feeding him a poisoned goat at the house of Safiyyah bint Huwaya, page 453, quoting from Ibn Kathir page 211. When the Prophet questioned Zainab, she said to him, "You have killed my father, uncle, husband, and brother," page 454, quoting from Al-Bihaqi page 257. Zainab was executed immediately. The poison remained in the body of the Prophet for 3 years until it finally caused his death, page 454, quoting from Ibn Kathir page 211. For that reason, Muslims believed that their Prophet died as a martyr, page 454, quoting from Ibn Kathir page 216. The Muslim Mujahideen did the same thing to the Coptic Christians when they invaded Egypt during the 7th century. And they implemented that forcible conversion policy in every Christian land they invaded, from Levant to Spain, including Anatolia, today Turkey, Syria, Iraq, Yemen, and Sudan. Today, the ISIS Mujahideen are striving hard to reclaim all those countries, which their ancestors had invaded and Islamized by the sword. This is the gist of the ancient Islamic Caliphate dynasty. At least, ISIS invented a fourth option which wasn't there before: obey, pay, leave or die by the sword. In those days, there were three options only: obey, pay, or die by the sword. Today, many people are claiming that what ISIS Mujahideen are doing has nothing to do with Islam. Whoever says such thing, is either purposely lying or has no knowledge of the history of the Islamic invasions or conquests. The Muslim invaders looked at Egypt as a fat cow that they had to milk. At first all Egyptian Christians were ordered to pay the jizya or convert to Islam. Christian families who could not pay the heavy jizya were forced to surrender their children in the place of their jizya. Many Christians of weak faith converted to Islam. The mass conversion of Egyptian Christians led to decrease in the revenues that had been generated from the jizya. In order to compensate for that, the Muslim rulers kept on increasing the amount to the jizya until it became impossible for many Christians to pay it. It reached to the point that the cruel Muslim rulers began to demand jizya from the families of dead Christians. Farmers were required to pay besides the jizya another payment called kharaj. Those who failed to make the two payments, their lands were confiscated by the Muslim ruler. Christian leaders were often imprisoned and tortured and would not be freed until their Christian communities paid huge ransoms to the Arab Muslim rulers. Besides all those evils, Muslim rulers encouraged the immigration of the poor Arab Muslims of Arabia to the rich and fertile Egypt. In short period of time, the number of Arab Muslims in Egypt surpassed the number of Coptic Christians. Today, the majority of Muslims in Egypt and other Arab countries are descendants of those Christians who couldn't pay their jizya hundreds of years ago. Before the sword of Islam reached Egypt, it was 100% Christian country. Now out of the 90 million Egyptians, only 10% are Coptic Christians. Today, ISIS has resurrected that killing sword of Islam again. The problem of ISIS cannot be solved through bombing its mujahideen. The more you hit them, the more they increase in number. The 20 years military campaigns against Al-Qaeda in Afghanistan enabled them to grow in number until finally they gave birth to a group more dangerous than them, ISIS. This group need not be treated just as a terrorist group. No. They are not only terrorists, but they are people with strong religious beliefs, which justify the killing of the so-called infidels, beheading their men, robbing their properties, raping their women and selling them and their children as slaves, and blowing up their places of worship. Then, they implemented the Sharia laws in those lands they have taken. This is exactly what Islam did in those Christian lands it invaded. It did even worse than that, in those Hindu lands it invaded. Hindustan lost 80 million people during the Islamic invasions to the subcontinent of India. Unless the problem of ISIS is correctly diagnosed and given its proper name, that problem will never be solved or go away. ISIS followers are true Muslims who follow the correct version of Islam that had been practiced by the Prophet Muhammad. He had been followed by his four caliphs: Umayyad dynasty, Abbasid dynasty, Fatimid Caliphate, Mamluk Sultanate, Timur, Tamerlane, Babur, Ottoman Empire, Muslim Brotherhood, Khomeini and his Islamic Revolution, Bin Laden and his Al-Qaeda, Taliban, Hamas, Hezbollah, Ansars Allah of Yemen, the Somali Shabab, the Nigerian Boko Haram, Janjaweed of Sudan, ISIS, the Islamic Caliphate State, etc. These mujahideen of ISIS are not just terrorists and dangerous criminals, but they are victims as well. They are victims to false teachings which promise them if they die in fighting of better life in paradise where there are young and eternal virgins who are waiting in heaven to receive them in their arms. A paradise that its length, width, depth, and height as large as the heavens and the earth. A place of eternal bliss where there are rivers of wine, milk, and honey. Where there are not only beautiful virgin girls, but young boys as beautiful as pearls. If truly there is such a place, then who wants to continue living in this miserable life which is full of evils and sinners? Why not blow yourself up inside a car or truck that loaded with bombs or a belt full of explosive devices? Why not die as Shaheed, or holy martyr, and exit this life of never-ending misery and suffering and go up there where the true enjoyment is waiting for you? This is why these Islamic mujahideen are so determined and fearless and compete among themselves for achieving Shahada, or martyrdom. Every one of them wants to be sent on a suicidal mission. Can anyone convince a Christian, a Jew, a Hindu, or a Buddhist to blow himself up? No, he can't. A preacher said, if God tells believers what he has prepared for them in heaven, then Christians will kill themselves. It is only Satan who wants man to kill himself so that he can go directly to hell. God wants all people to have life and have it abundantly. Jesus said, the thief, Satan, comes only to steal and kill and destroy. I came that they may have life, and have it abundantly. John 10:10. Satan always steals, kills, and destroys the lives of innocent people through Muslim terrorists and at the same time causes those terrorists to destroy their bodies in horrific and brutal ways. Islam is a big lie of the devil. ISIS is created, funded, and supported by Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and the Federation of the United Arab Emirates. Turkey openly supports the fighters of ISIS and opens its airports to allow them to come in and pass to Syria and then Iraq. These same countries today joined the US-led World Coalition against ISIS, while still supporting them. The latest survey shows that 92% of young Saudi men are supporting ISIS, and they are ready to join that newly founded Islamic Caliphate state. Islam, eventually, will turn all Arab and Muslim countries into safe havens for those numerous terrorist groups and make every country in the Muslim world a failed state. So far, some of them have already become failed states: Somalia, Libya, Syria, and Pakistan. Some of them have begun to disintegrate, such as Iraq, Yemen, Tunisia, Egypt, Lebanon, Afghanistan, Sudan, and Nigeria. After that, every terrorist group will occupy some land and implement the Sharia law. At the same time, those small caliphate states or sultanates will be fighting against each other and against the entire world. The Muslim countries were held in check for so long through dictatorship rules and monarchies. Those two types of absolute government kept Islamic terrorists under control since the time those countries achieved independencies from British and France. The modern influences of the Internet and Western secularism created in those countries what is called the Arab Spring. The Arab Spring led to the removals of the long-ruling dictators such as Ben Ali of Tunisia, Gaddafi of Libya, Mubarak of Egypt, Ali Abdullah Saleh of Yemen, and diminished the ruling power of Bashar al-Assad of Syria. American and British troops by then had already toppled the dictator, Saddam Hussein of Iraq. Sooner or later, the remaining three absolute monarchies of Saudi Arabia, Jordan, and Morocco are going to crumble under either the Arab Spring or the Muslim terrorists. Then, Turkey and Iran and many more African and Asian Muslim countries will follow suit and disintegrate, collapse, and cease to exist as modern states. Secularism, founding a government and a society without God's assistance or not based on sacred texts, holy scriptures, but based on human ideas and governed by man-made laws, democracy, rule of the majority, human rights, all individuals are equal regardless of their gender, color, race, religion, caste, ethnicity, etc., women rights, man and woman are equal in every respect, children rights, no child labor, no child marriage, and no any other form of child abuse, and the like are all Western ideas and concepts and have no existence in the Islamic religious texts, the Quran, the Sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad, the books of the schools of Sharia, and all mothers of the Islamic books. These are foreign ideas and none of them can be found in the Islamic vocabulary. They were imposed on the Muslim world by the European colonization and modern Western influences. Shortly after the Western colonists left, those ideologies continued to survive through dictatorship regimes until the modern Muslim terrorist groups and the Arab Spring revolutions uprooted those long-ruling dictators. In fact, the removals of those dictatorship regimes are curse rather than blessing for the non-Muslim world. ISIS' ultimate dream is to establish a gigantic Islamic caliphate stretching from Vienna to Spain, Moscow to India, Istanbul to Yemen, Mogadishu to Morocco, and Jakarta to Burkina Faso. When such a vast Islamic state is founded and the Sharia laws are implemented, then it wants to send its mujahideen fighters, the so-called lions of jihad, to invade and conquer the rest of the world. After all, Muslim scholars collectively agreed that all the Arabs in Muslim countries today are the descendants of former Arab Christians who were converted to Islam by the sword. The American couple once again changed their travel plans. Instead of forsaking their research, their experiences in the Middle East so far convinced them to continue staying in the Third World to carry on their research. It was clear to them that there were so many things to do in this dark and backward part of the world. This time the couple decided to take the risk and travel to one of those Muslim countries that were notoriously known for their religious fanaticism, violence, terrorism, abuse of women and female children, backwardness, and ignorance. The last two features of ignorance and backwardness were common in all the 55 Muslim countries, from Burkina Faso to Indonesia, from Morocco to Bangladesh, from Yemen to Turkey, and from Tanzania to Kazakhstan. As a matter of fact, all the 1.5 billion Muslims wherever they go and wherever they live, they commonly share these features in lesser or greater degrees as part and parcel of their religious beliefs. After consulting the violations of human rights recordings, the FBI's listings of wanted terrorists, and the International Criminal Court's past and recent trials of persons who committed crimes against humanity, war crimes, and genocides, the couple singled out 8 Muslim countries: Syria, Iraq, Afghanistan, Pakistan, Libya, Yemen, Somalia, and Sudan. The last 6 of those countries were listed among the 10 most backward countries in the world. Almost over 85% of their populations were illiterate. Their streets are the filthiest streets in the world. In those countries, domestic animals like dogs, cats, donkeys, goats, sheep, cows, and horses live side by side with human beings. Their houses are always teeming with all kinds of insects such as lizards, flies, mice, mosquitoes, and cockroaches. Most of their habitats have no toilets and washrooms, and therefore they use either common washrooms or go to the wilderness to answer the call of nature. Their little ones urinate and defecate everywhere in the lanes and streets, same as their animals do. An American preacher visited one of those countries and said, "It is a miracle that people can live in such filthy streets and homes and not fall sick and die. The Third World is a very dangerous place to live in. It is backward and underdeveloped. The countries are corrupt. Their military soldiers and policemen are more dangerous than gangsters. Their political leaders are tyrants and their religious leaders are terrorists. The minds of the people are empty of any useful knowledge but filled with all kinds of superstition and religious myths. In addition to those curses and evils, the people are very violent and most of them are dangerous religious terrorists. Every young man wants to blow himself up and kills others. Due to their constant strife for power, civil and religious wars, there were always social upheavals, which resulted in mass displacement and migration to neighboring countries. They were divided in various religious sects and groups. Every sect and every group claimed to be the sole possessor of the truth and hence condemned others as infidels and strove to kill them. The follower of the Sunni sect would blow his body up inside a crowded mosque of the Shiite. The Shiite adherent would load a car and truck with bombs and go and blow it up in a crowded Sunni market. Those countries also were very poor and unable to support the masses with their limited resources. Many of the youth would do anything they could to escape from their miserable conditions and go to Europe. There were human smugglers in Egypt, Morocco, Algeria, and Libya. They would use big floating boats to smuggle illegal immigrants across the Mediterranean Sea to European shores. Each boat would be loaded to the brim. One could not move a limb in those overcrowded boats. The boat would be stuffed with children, women, old and young men and women. Every now and then one of those boats would be tossed by the huge waves and capsize due to overloading. The latest report stated that 500 Syrians and Palestinians were drowned when their boat went down. Not a single survivor. Hundreds of Somalis, Sudanese, Africans, and Arabs of different nationalities were drowned. The smugglers would charge each passenger several $1,000s. Those who could not afford to pay $3,000 to $4,000 would move to another country and join the refugees camps. Those displaced masses became heavy burden on the United Nations. The UN offices would try to get rid of those masses as soon as possible, and that by sending them for resettlement in the advanced countries. Among the first world countries, only Canada, Australia, Germany, Netherlands, and the United States of America would agree to take them. Other Western countries had closed their borders on the faces of those poor refugees. Unfortunately, when resettled, they bring along all their coping skills, evils, filthinesses, and religious fanaticism and violence. The American couple, Malik and Malika, were faced with the difficulty of choosing the lesser evil among those 8 Muslim countries. Syria and Iraq were ruled out immediately due to the presence of the ISIS and the Jabhat al-Nusra in their soils. The al-Nusra Front or Jabhat al-Nusra is a branch of al-Qaeda operating in Syria and Lebanon. ISIS doesn't need definition or introduction, because if you would ask the animals and birds, they would tell you what it is. Even the animals did not escape the brutality of those ISIS terrorists. ISIS began to load bombs on dogs, cows, donkeys, and horses and send them in suicidal missions to the police stations and military camps of Iraqi and Syrian police and soldiers. There are even reports that the terrorist of ISIS had sent children with bombs fastened on their bodies to the Iraqi and Syrian police stations and military camps and detonated them with remote controls. It is suffice to say, ISIS is the bastard child of the Al-Qaeda. By the way, recently the main leader of Al-Qaeda, Ayman al-Zawahiri, issued fatwa condemning the brutality of ISIS and declaring its terrorists as kofar, infidels. After that religious decree became public, the 2 terrorist groups began killing each other. But, after the planes of the world US-led coalition started to bombard indiscriminately the 2 terrorist groups, that action led to the reconciliation of the ISIS and Jabhat al-Nusra. The 2 terrorist groups felt that the war against the so-called the Great Satan, the USA, is more important and urgent than their individual differences. They postponed their fight against each other and joined hands in fighting against the great devil America. According to the recent reports, ISIS has been defeated in Iraq and Syria. Its mujahideen have been driven out of Mosul city in Iraq and also out of their strongholds in Syria. The main question, after ISIS lost its capital city Raqqa in Syria, where its thousands of mujahideen will go next. Will they return to the countries from where they came, or will they scatter in Syria and Iraq and continue their jihad? This is the question which gives restlessness to many Western countries. Many of those young mujahideen fighters originally came from Europe. If they decided to return to Europe, they will cause tremendous threats to the lives of millions of Westerners. Many of those mujahideen will want to take revenge on those Western countries which joined the world US-led coalition against ISIS and bombarded their caliphate's cities and towns in Iraq and Syria and caused their defeat. In my opinion, the defeat of ISIS may give birth to a new dangerous jihadi group which may surpass its mother in violence and brutality. Al-Qaeda also had its main headquarters in Afghanistan and Pakistan. It is also operating terrorist branches in Yemen and Libya. Accordingly, the couple crossed those 4 countries and marked them with red ink as not safe zones for their peaceful mission. They left with 2 countries, Somalia and Sudan. They had to choose one of the 2. Somalia was ruled out because it is a failed state with no embassies or consulates. Without any diplomatic representation, there was no way of getting official visas. Besides, in that Muslim country there was the third nastiest terrorist group in the world, Al-Shabaab, or the Islamic Youth for Jihad. Therefore, Sudan became their last remaining choice.